Hey, Micah, what's going on? Mariners still got you down?
We're cursed, and we don't even have a cool curse like the curse of the Babe or a Billy Goat curse. We're like the Cleveland Browns, where we just don't win.
Yeah, I feel you. You know, I'm a San Francisco Giants fan, and for us, it was 56 years between World Series championships. Mariners only been around for less than 50. I think it's 49 seasons now. So sometimes you got to go through a little heartbreak before the good times that happen. And then when they do, they could happen in bunches. So maybe there's better days ahead for you.
But I was born in 1977, like the Mariners. It's literally my whole life.
That's true. I feel you.
All right, so there just seems to be news flying all around when it comes to prep sports in the area. And we're going to get to the great slate of Week 8 matchups we have coming up here on Varsity360, coming to you once again from the First Pacific Financial Studio. But Tim, times they are a-changing when it comes to league playoff berths in other sports.
Yeah, so I think the newest revelation, at least that we learned, it's actually something that was decided over the summer. But I was at District Golf for 4A and 3A last week, and they mentioned how that for the 3A there's no bi-district. They weren't qualifying to go to the bi-district tournament later in May and then to go to state. And then this week would normally be cross country. Usually the 4A's on Wednesday and the 3A's are on Thursday. And again, they go to the West Side Classic bi-district meet another week later. But again, this year for 3A, there are no bi-districts. So there is there's another layer of qualifying to get to state. So this weekend, the district tennis championships are going on for the 3A up at Club Green Meadows, and they are competing for berths directly to state. And so it's a little bit confusing because it's kind of been like this for years and years. The 3A and the 4A, they go up and they got to qualify through this bi-district tournament, this partnership with District 3, which is up in the Puget Sound area, Tacoma, Olympia up there. And it's kind of been the way. I even when I go to like Columbia River, and they don't do the bi-district anymore because they used to be 3A, but now they're 2A. And now it's strictly a district tournament because they play within district, but they'll still use bi-district or regional in their verbiage. So the situation is this for the 3A. And again, this is only for the 3A. The 4A still got a bi-district agreement. So I want to make that clear. Just for the 3A. And the reason for the 3A is twofold. One, there are 6 schools in District 4 for the 3A classification. There are these 5 teams in the 3A Greater St. Helens League. And then there is Shelton. And Shelton, for sports outside of football, they play as a 3A school in the 2A Evergreen Conference. That's how they play their regular league. And so because there are 6 teams in the district, and because 3A gets 20 berths to state, their state tournament is 20 berths, not 16 because they have 72 schools or whatever. There are more berths to be had, and there's more teams in the 3A in District 4. And so this year, District 4 for 3A will get 2 berths to state. So 2 teams automatically are going to state in every sport, with the exception of football, because football does something a little bit different. But volleyball, soccer, basketball, baseball, softball, they're going to get 2 teams going to state this year. Now, in some years in the past, the district sometimes did get 2 berths to state, but they still partnered with District 3 and a chance to get a 3rd team and maybe even a 4th team in some years.
Yeah, you wrote about it. I thought this was really interesting about how it was basically a calculated gamble almost that the district down here took, because they're like, we know we have 1 berth, but hey, if we glue ourselves to this district up north, we could get 2, we could get even 3, but as you wrote in your column, it's kind of been a wash. So in a way, they sometimes ended up with 2, almost never ended up with 3, but it feeds into another kind of hot topic, which is the rising cost of travel.
Right, and this is an issue that we've talked about before. And we're going to talk about, again, the football, they're doing this crossover week 6 football thing starting next year to reduce on travel costs. Now, in past years, and anyone who's followed Camas and Union and Skyview and Prairie and Evergreen and Mountain View in the past, they know that to participate in some of these by-district tournaments, that most of the events are held up in the Tacoma area. Sometimes you get games down here, but there have been years like when Prairie girls basketball was really good, making a run through that they had to go up and make 2 or 3 trips up north for basketball because, basketball's played, you play and then you take a night off and you play again, you take a night off. It might go on for about a week or week and a half. And so there are several trips up and back that they got to make. And I think one year we had local teams rolling up like 1,200, 1,400 miles to participate in the by-district tournament. And they're playing on school nights a lot of these times. So there's a lot of late night trips back from Tacoma or Olympia or something like that. So that was a factor too. I think that kind of came into the athletic director's minds. But like you said, it's been kind of a wash. It's been kind of a wash. So last year the district received 1 automatic berth. Now, anytime a district receives only 1 berth, then WIA rules stipulate that they can partner with a neighboring district, and the neighboring district has to work with that district that only gets 1. They don't get a chance. They don't get a choice to go, no, we don't like this agreement. They have to. It's one of the few situations in the WIA where the rules say you have to do this thing. Normally, WIA defers down to the districts on decisions, but this is one of the situations where they say, no, this one for fairness, you got to do this. But in some years in the past, it hasn't always been District 3. Some years, there's been a partnership with District 2, which is up in Seattle. So we've had situations where teams are going up to the Seattle, or Seattle teams are coming down here. Again, a longer travel, but they couldn't, when the years they couldn't come up with a equitable agreement with District 3. They have worked with District 2 in the past. But again, like last year they would have all received 1 berth from all their sports, but they glued with District 3, a chance to get 2 or 3 because they were sending 3 teams to the by-district tournament. 3A was last year. But in almost every sport, 1 team from the 3A Greater St. Helens went to state. In almost every sport, with the exception of fast-pitch softball, they got 2. Baseball didn't get any. Yeah. So anyway, the net result of all of these was they just got what they were allocated.
Well, and District 3 is huge. I mean, their tournaments are, massive brackets. And like you said, you're making multiple trips up there. So I think it ends up making a lot of sense in this case that you have a smaller local tournament to decide state berths down here versus joining, the Byzantine bracketology of, the district.
Yeah, going up to that by-district often is like playing 2 state tournaments because it's like a 16-team tournament up there. It's kind of like you play a state tournament, and then if you go to state, you get to play another state tournament. I do think one of our colleagues, Jeff Klein, will be very happy because Jeff is always, and this always struck me when I first started covering in the state of Washington. But he was always bugged about, the team lost, so they're done. And we go, no, they get another chance, And in some cases in the by-district, it could take 3 losses to end your season in the by-district.
Yeah, depending on as the number 1 seed.
Yeah, if you came in as the number 1 seed, or if the district picked up like 7 or 8 berths, then sometimes there was the way the bracket worked, that there was a second chance if you advanced far enough into the bracket. So this year, this is how it's going to work pretty much in every sport in 3A. So there will be a district playoff here involving just 3A Greater St. Helens League teams, with a caveat that Shelton could also be involved. So in every sport, the top 4 teams from the 3A Greater St. Helens League, that's a 5-team league, so the 5th place team won't participate. They'll go off and they'll play 1 versus 4 and 2 versus 3.
Makes sense.
The caveat with that with Shelton is if Shelton finishes in the top 4 of the 2A Evergreen Conference, then Shelton gets to play the 4th place team from the Greater St. Helens League in sort of like a pigtail game. And then the winner of that would play number 1. So once you down to 4 teams, 1 versus 4 or Shelton, and 2 versus 3, the winners of those games would advance to the district championship, they're both assured now of a state berth, except for one caveat, and that is if the number one from the Greater St. Helens League, the regular season league champion, happens to lose to the number 4 team or to Shelton, then that number 1 team gets a second chance against the loser of the championship game. So it's kind of a way of protecting the regular season champion. So it's not just a single elim and they're out for their situation. So if number 1 wins and then 2 and 3 play and that team wins, they're both assured state berths. If number 1 loses, then the winner of 2 and 3 advances to the championship game against 4 or Shelton. Then the loser of that game would come back and play number 1 for the second berth. So it's a more condensed playoff. So it can be over in a couple days, which allows the league a little bit more time to get in their league game. That's going to be really important come springtime with baseball and softball. Gives them a little bit more time, better weather. One sort of trade-off with that is sometimes going up and playing District 3 and all those playoff games can get you playoff ready, get you some experience. It gets you sometimes it'll elevate you in the eyes of the seating committee. So, for instance, if you think about Heritage Boys Soccer last year, Heritage Boys Soccer were the league champions from the 3A Greater St. Helens League. They won their first round game, and then they went up, and I think they played like Gig Harbor in the semifinals, a tough team. I think they were, very well regarded, beat them, and then they went to the district title game and won that up north. And I think the culmination of those 3 wins allowed Heritage to, I think they were seated number 2 at state. They were seated very high, either 2 or 3. I'm pretty sure it was 2. Had the situation that they're going to be playing this year had been in fact last year, then the seating committee might not have been as impressed that they came through a tough district and they were district champions, and that got them a top seed. So, local teams here will need, if they're looking for better seating in the eyes of the seating committee, they're going to have to schedule some tougher matches in the non-league to win, because just beating, Evergreen or Prairie or Mountain View might not be as impressive as beating, a Gig Harbor or Auburn Riverside or whatever teams up north.
I think we all like those intriguing early season games between top statewide teams. So I look at that as a net positive.
Yeah. And so, so again, a lot of benefits. So we're going to have like district championship games down here for 3A that involve local teams. So there's a chance, for big gyms and big turnouts and big games. So those won't be being played up in Auburn or up in Tacoma or up in Olympia. They'll be all down here. And again, I think we're still going to have teams the opportunity to play off their way into state.
Yes.
Right. So if you finish your top 4 out of the 5, you're going to have that second chance to get there. So they'll still get that playoff experience. It'll just be a lot more streamlined and a lot faster. And this will just be probably for this year, because the allocations for District 4 and 3A, they kind of waffle between 1 and 2. It's kind of like 1.6 or something like that. So the way WI does that is 1 year you get 1 and 1 year you get 2. So last year they got 1, so they paired up with District 3. This year they got 2. They said,
we're good.
That's enough for us. Next year, it'll probably be back to 1, and so they'll be gluing up again with District 3, most likely. So, a little bit different twist this year, and we'll see what it turns out.
All right. I'm looking forward to seeing a District 3A championship game down here in all those sports, so that's awesome. Well, let's talk football. It's Week 8. It's a massive week when it comes to sorting out the playoff picture, and nowhere is it more massive than the 4A Greater St. Helens League. There's a potential where we could basically know our 2 postseason bound teams after this week. Right?
Yeah, if the two teams that won last week, Camas and Skyview, if they win again this week, then those are our 2 teams that are moving on to the Week 10 playoffs, and they'll play next week for the league championship. So, I think last week brought some interesting developments, and we kind of learned a little bit more. I think Skyview, big win over Union. I think their confidence is growing coming off of the win with Chief South, their first non-league game at home, and Skyview scoring a big win over Union. I think you got to look at the Storm. Camas, I think played a closer game than a lot of people that we were probably expecting against Battleground. It was an 8-7 game in the second half, and Camas scored a couple touchdowns in the second half to make it 22-7. It kind of raises the stakes to Skyview versus Battleground this week.
Yeah, I mean, those two programs are kind of have gone in different directions the past 3 weeks, where Skyview started 0-4 and has now won 3 in a row. Battleground started 3-0, but has now dropped 4 games in a row. But like you said, they played Camas tougher. So I think one of the when we were back here a few weeks ago making our predictions, I said with the lowest of confidence that I didn't think Skyview was going to get through to the playoffs. I think I feel pretty good in changing that prediction, mostly because of actually seeing their quarterback in action. Dugan Logue, he's had 4 touchdowns in each of the last 2 games. And I just think the Storm used that tough first half of the season to really kind of find their identity. And they're playing their best football at the time of year when you want to play the best football.
They're a younger team than in past years, and players with a lot of varsity experience. Now they're getting to experience. They experienced that against some very tough teams in September, and instead of letting that schedule beat you down, they kind of took those experiences and learned from them, and now they're applying that with some really good wins. The win against Decatur was actually marked as a forfeit, so the Storm are actually 3-4. They got a nice win against Chief South and then a really nice win against Union. And again, Battleground, I think they can feel good about how. I mean, really for Battleground, they've lost 4 in a row, but it's just a handful of plays, and they could be 5-2 or maybe even 7-0. So this is a chance for them to kind of wash those last 4 weeks away. If they can come out and get a win against Skyview, then it kind of changes the whole course of Week 9 and what the potential might happen. So I think I got you scheduled to be at Kiggins on Friday. So
I love it. I'll be there. Yeah. And really quick touching on Camas, I think Camas, They haven't always had to grind out a win in league play, but that's kind of what they had to do last week. And I think they continue to kind of find the rhythm on offense behind quarterback Tyson Ruggiero. What was interesting to me is I saw he rush for nearly 150 yards last week. And, he's someone, I think he's thrown 14 touchdown passes, which ranks 3rd, I think, in the area. And so, for me, I think that's going to be the key to how much momentum Camas carries into potentially a league championship deciding game in Week 9 and then beyond, is how dynamic, what sort of dynamic play they get from their quarterback.
Yeah, I think that's something to keep an eye on. They're going to play in Union over at McKenzie this weekend. Yeah, just kind of see, what are they going to produce here in a second league game? The Camas Union game hasn't really been as exciting as we kind of got used to in the first 10 years of the rivalry. Union's the last 4A Greater St. Helens League team to beat Camas in league play, but that was during the COVID spring season. And since then, it's been very lopsided toward Camas. So again, a chance for Union to kind of regroup and make a good showing here in a rivalry setting.
All right, let's move on to the 3A Greater St. Helens League and another massive game with postseason implications happening in the early window at McKenzie. Evergreen and Heritage, 2 teams that enter league play 2-1, and really Kelso set themselves up with 2 big wins the past 2 weeks to kind of be. In fact, I think they can clinch the number 1 seed with the win.
It's a little bit different now because there's not necessarily 1 seeds and 2 seeds because that's going to be developed by the seeding committee. But I think when they sort of prioritize team, they will look at that. So, Kelso plays Mountain View this week. Is that right?
Yeah.
Mountain View, and if they win that game, then they've clinched a playoff spot and a share of the league title at the very least. With these playing the bottom 2 teams in the league these next 2 weeks, it's kind of a perfect setup for the Highlanders in a imperfect situation for them, right? So Anders Dahl suffered an elbow injury, and now his younger brother Owen, a sophomore, steps into that role, taking over. And they also had an injury to Parker Stewart. They had to move some people around. They get 2 weeks now to kind of work those kinks out and get things kind of rolling as they move on to week 10, assuming that they get the wins that they expect to get here in the next couple of weeks. The Evergreen Heritage game is an interesting game. We've been talking up the Timberwolves all year. It's we love these stories of teams that haven't had a lot of success, but now they're having success. We always like to be able to highlight teams that do well after many years of not doing so well. And it was great to watch the excitement created from that 6-0 start. The one question mark that I had with the Heritage in the last couple of weeks is their offense has not quite been in sync. And they've been last week they kind of went back and forth with the quarterbacks because of injury. I think they started actually Owen Daly, and then he took like a knee to the ribs or something, and he had to check out, and Devon Granville came in. And then he limped off with an injury, and Owen Daly came back. The running game struggled for consistency. The first half, that Kelso kind of held them in check. I don't think they crossed midfield until early in the second half. They need to find that. They need to find that rhythm because Evergreen is starting to figure their offense out.
I'm just about to say.
They were leaning so hard on Jaden Baum and their talented crew of receivers that the struggle to move the ball on the ground was a concern of mine. But they have kind of found it here in these last couple of weeks, particularly last week against Prairie. And now they're kind of being a more complete team. I think they're being closer to the team that we thought they were going to be way back at the start of the season. And it's kind of like, last week, the one thing about Heritage is their defense is playing very, very well. Very, very well. I think last week against Kelso, they did as much as they could to keep them in the game until, Kelso just kept at it and pulled away, and the offense wasn't really able to muster much. And so, again, this is going to be a big test for that Heritage defense. They're going to want to try to keep it close, make some plays on offense, but it's going to be a big challenge for against an Evergreen team that is playing really well right now.
Yeah, I mean, Jaden Baum leads the area with over 1,500 receiving yards and
passing yards.
Or passing yards. Sorry, he can't throw and pass to himself, but he leads the area in that statistical category. So if they become more complementary and be able to move the ground, I guess that's the challenge for Heritage. How do we make them one-dimensional like they were earlier in the season, but not get burned by
right? That's the thing. I mean, that's what Evergreen really wants. They want people to respect the run game so they can take it and go deep. And that's kind of what Evergreen did against Prairie. They were hitting these short passes. They got to Terrence Arion, just like short curls, and then it was kind of like a running game through the pass. And so the defense had to sort of come up and respect that, and it opened up lanes in the run game, and the opening up lanes in the run game then allowed them to take things deeper downfield. And it worked really well against Prairie, and I think it's probably the same. They're going to take a similar approach against Heritage. So.
All right. Well, another massive game in the 2A Greater St. Helens League, and that would be between Columbia River and Washougal. Washougal undefeated in league play. Columbia River just one loss in league play, coming off a big 19-14 win over Ridgefield last week. These are two teams that really like to run the ball, and that shows in the fact that they have the two leading rushers by rushing yardage. Royce Jones leading the area with almost 800 yards in rushing for Washougal, and then not far behind him, Savion McCoy, who has 10 rushing touchdowns, over 700 rushing yards as the area's number 2 rusher. This one, I think, has got to be for the fans of the throwback, old school, try to pound it football.
Yeah, if you take a look at the results of the teams in the top half of the league, they've all been really tight, close games that could have broken either way. Last week with River and Ridgefield, it was a 19-14 game, a game that River kind of sort of controlled and dominated first half, but Ridgefield made some plays and got back. And then the defense kind of held them off. You look at Washougal's wins over Ridgefield was kind of similar, against Woodland kind of similar. This is a game that if how it breaks, it can either clear things up or it
Really
could
muddy
really
them.
muddy things up. So if Washougal wins, then that'll push them to 6-0 in league, and they got Hawkinson to finish next week. They kind of sort of put themselves in really good position to earn that league title and kind of earn that top spot as they head to the seating committee for week 10. But if River comes in and wins this thing, well, then you've got a potential for a three-way tie at the top between Washougal, Woodland, and River, depending on what happens next week. So, it could be a wild and crazy time if River comes out and win this game. And I wouldn't put it past the Rapids. I think they've kind of they've got McCoy running the ball, and they've been able to hit some big plays with some passing plays here in the last couple weeks, and they're kind of. You got to respect both, and they play really good defense. And this is probably going to come down to, who can come up with that big play.
Yeah, I mean, I got to see River firsthand last week, and I was just really impressed with their blocking schemes. Instead of like just running straight up between the tackles, they'll kind of give it to Savion or in a lot of cases Joey Iannello, and they'll kind of be patient, and they'll wait for their pulling guards, and they'll wait to get something out on the perimeter, and then once those guys on the edge, those blocking tight ends can kind of seal that edge there, it can open up some big things. So it's not a boring run-oriented offense by any means. It's very dynamic.
You had a video clip of them scoring a touchdown in the first half that really kind of showed that. It was like from the end zone, and it looked, and it was a handoff to save it, and he just kind of breaks over the left side, and there's just this wide open. He just kind of strolls on in like nobody's there, because nobody was there in that hole. So it's kind of, it was a really good, example of that execution working well for the Rapids.
Yeah, but then Royce Jones on the other side in Washougal, he might be the best all-around athlete in the 2A Greater St. Helens League.
Yeah, and they've got other weapons too. DeAndre Goodell brings, some things to the table. Royce Jones, can just pound it and run over people. And Triple Afson over the last, I think he hasn't thrown an incomplete pass in 3 weeks.
Wow.
So I mean, granted, they're playing some teams that are not powerhouses, but it kind of shows that he's executing when he needs to execute. So so this will be a really, really interesting matchup on Saturday.
All right.
Or Friday.
Friday. Yeah, let's cap it off with the Trico League. And guess what? One of the league contenders has, wait for it, a canceled game.
Yeah, it's I actually saw it, because every week I go through and I set up the standings before the Friday games, and they had already notched, like they had given Seton Catholic an extra league win on the league standings on the weekly website. I was like, what? They haven't played that many league games. But then I happened to notice scrolling down that they had already notched 1-0 against Stevenson for this week. So I guess Stevenson had already contacted Seton and said, we're not coming to play you guys. Stevenson, they've been playing with like 15, 16 guys on the roster the whole season.
Yeah,
they've had a couple of injuries.
It's been tough sledding.
They pulled out of week 2 game against, I think it was Elma, because they didn't have enough players to go. They went up to Kalama a couple of weeks back, fell behind 32-0 at halftime, and didn't come out after halftime because they were beat up, and said that's it. So I think that experience for them led them to think, all right, we had a home game last week against Le Center. I'm sure it was probably homecoming or something like that. So they went ahead and played the Wildcats. I think the Wildcats came out and started some younger players earlier to give them some experience. And I just think the whole, coming on the road and playing, they said, it's probably better for us if we don't play this game. We get ourselves healthy. We can finish in week 9 against rival Columbia White Salmon in a game that will be, a better matchup for them. So Seton gets a week off, which I don't know if it's a good thing or bad thing. They got a week off before they have to host Le Center in week 9. Yeah. Could be a good thing.
Whether it's good or bad, it is just what it is. And what it is it guarantees Seton is going to enter week 9 undefeated in league play. So now just Le Center has to uphold its end of the bargain, which they face a kind of a tricky, interesting matchup, I think, against Kalama, being that Kalama, you just can never count them out.
Yeah, I mean, they've got talent, and they've had a week off. They didn't play because they would have had Columbia White Salmon on the schedule last week. They got a week off to heal up, which is a good thing. Henry Sigurdsson, their talented dual threat quarterback, he was on the bench a couple weeks ago against Seton Catholic with an ice pack on his foot in the fourth quarter because he had a ankle injury, foot injury. So what his status is coming into this week, we're unsure. But if he can come out and be healthy, then the Chinooks are a potential dangerous team. The Center's been playing very, very well this year, and so if the Wildcats get the win, it will be career win number 200 for John Lambert. So
congratulations, John. For
whenever it happens.
Whenever it happens. Not saying it's a shoe-in. We don't do that. But then just one last game in the Trico that's going to be impactful. It's really a must-win game for Kingsway against Castle Rock. I think whoever ends up winning that keeps alive their hopes for that number 4 postseason berth out of the Trico.
Yeah, I think it's more important for Kingsway than. It's important for both teams, but I think for Kingsway, just the way the schedule works out, this is one they really need to get a win on. Castle Rock will play the final week against Kalama, so there's a second chance to kind of play their way back in should they not win. But I think it's really important for Kingsway. I think they need a good game, a complete game. I think it's up at Castle Rock this year. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's going on the road. Yeah. So a lot of playoff ramifications there. Could depending on the outcome, could set up for a potential tiebreaker situation with them and Kalama and Castle Rock and Kingsway. So. It's an interesting game to keep an eye on.
All right. Well, week 8, it's always one of the most pivotal weeks in the high school sports season. So be sure to follow us on 360 Preps. Follow us, for highlight videos. You've been putting some weekly highlight packages that you obviously have voted with your clicks that you really like them, and so we'll continue to do that. So again, thanks for tuning in to Varsity 360, and we will see you next time.